PGA, that's the law, yeah. Spurge on with the ball, yeah. Commas way after calling. Patrick Ewing in the garden. Going for my people starving. Keeping up with no Joneses. Generous with my goal, yeah. Boy, don't nobody on us. Squad needed merch, so we bought our own shop. Free is my own hair, but I got it on lock. Counted all lost, counted all lost. Excuse me, I'm just trying to touch goals. Finished on my lab, bit of dead for the money got sent.
Blessings, blessings, blessings. Let me start by saying thank you so much for coming to this. We do not take this for granted. We wanted it to be small and intimate on purpose. So I'm gonna be a bit of your tour guide as we walk through pieces of this exhibit that I hope helps to further explain what's going on with the album. So if you follow me, I'm gonna take you over here to a caged butterfly. You'll notice that there are actually butterflies on the ledge and there are butterflies here. They are real, they are just asleep. We hoped they would wake up, but they have rebelled against us. I wanted to have this a part of my album cover because this album represents transformation. Jesus, the most important moment in my life, he changed me, he saved me, he transformed me. And I remember I really struggled with this idea of identity, particularly around my race. And I talked about on that song Monster, this whole idea of the Oreo, you know, black on the outside, white on the inside, which was the accusation I got a lot as a young man who was sort of articulate. But I remember meeting Jesus and he freed me from that and said, you will not be defined by anyone or anything except my word. And it changed me. I also had a similar moment of transformation when I ran into an artist's album. His name's Kendrick Lamar. He has an album called To Pimp a Butterfly. That's why the butterfly is in a cage. Because what tends to happen as artists or whoever you are get success, you often forget about those who came behind you. You often forget about that there are people who are not experiencing the freedom and sort of the liberty that you know. And I, as an artist, as a leader, I want to display the heart of God by consuming myself with those who are on the outskirts of society, those who are marginalized. So I want to see transformation as we go out and transform the world. Here's a song about it here.
Boy, I used to be a monster. I was tweaking, had my mama going bonkers. Yeah, you probably wouldn't believe it if it hadn't been for Jesus. I'd be still running around like I'm a gangster.
50,000 people got my hands up screaming. I'ma tell them all about Jesus, how he turned me from a real from them. There you go. You know, that song Monster is interesting because Wes, actually is a guy from Tampa, sent me the hook for it, you know, as Jesus is in the hook. It was probably about a year and a half ago. And I remember my knee-jerk reaction to hearing Jesus in the hook is, we got to take Jesus out of the hook because folks typically find it cheesy when you say Jesus in a hook. And if you want to be more missional, you got to think about that. And I remember the Spirit of God convicting me like, what are you talking about? How is it more missional by taking Jesus, the one who can actually accomplish the mission, out of the hook? And I remember in that moment that I was struck that even as we go out and tell all these people around the world about the importance of Jesus, that we're often tempted to compromise. I had a dream while I was making this album. And in that dream, my absolute worst fear, more than I fear dying, more than I fear losing a career or anything, I fear falling away from God. And in that dream, I had completely punted the faith. Well, I knew it in my heart, but I didn't tell it to the audiences that I was going in front of. And I was basically using this whole Christian hip-hop, Christian music industry as an extension to fund my own vanity. Not meaning anything I was talking about. In my dream, I lost my family, I lost my reputation, and I found myself literally in tears. And it woke me out my sleep, crying. By God's grace, my wife was there, and I just grabbed her as tight as I could and just prayed, oh God, don't let me fall. I wrote a song about it, and in that song, I really detailed some of the the things that go along with falling away, because that doesn't just happen. You just don't just wake up one morning and say, you know, I'm done with God. But it's a slow drift. And it made me want to evaluate where are the areas in my life where I am drifting away from the power that can keep me. I don't ever want to just leave people with a message of fear. So I also end the song, which is actually the next song, Art of Hope, with this vision of restoration. That even for the Davids among us who've fallen greatly, that though you take 100 steps away from God, repentance always leaves Jesus one step away to return. So here you have the art of drifting and the art of hope. Please listen.
You can build a Christian empire without God. Living for the bus, yeah, yeah. Breaking out the cups, yeah, yeah. Hennessy by the tub, yeah, yeah. Loosen up, yeah. We ain't in the field no more, just a dugout now. Did you turn God to your little business? Who cares, I'm winning, and I gotta go on. How y'all feeling tonight? If you ain't never left us, then maybe it's not over.
Amen, amen. If you'd follow me, I want to lead you over to this wall over here. On this wall we have Martin Luther King Jr., Charles Spurgeon, who I named my second son after, and a signed pair of Andre Ward's boxing gloves. All three of these are on my album cover if you didn't miss them. This wall is filled with heroes of mine. MLK, although certainly no one on this wall is perfect. King represented fighting for justice when it was unpopular. I know he's praised very much today, but he wasn't back then. He was assassinated, for crying out loud. Charles Spurgeon, another man who, in a time where owning slaves was a sort of in the fabric of society, Spurgeon stood up against it. He clothed the widow, he gave home to the orphan, and he also, along with that, preached a gospel. They call him the Prince of Preachers, and he stayed consistent to the day he died. Even when his own denomination turned against him, he stayed faithful. A man that struggled with great depression, a man of great struggle, but a man of incredible faith. My favorite quote from him is, if Christ be anything, he must be everything. And Andre Ward, undefeated fighter, when he retired, he was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Typically, folks don't even realize how high-ranked he was and how great his record was. The man hadn't lost a fight since he was like 11 years old, because he didn't have all the flamboyance that would come with like an Adrian Broner or a Floyd Mayweather, which is these fighters that basically sold their fights by being jerks. He was a man of integrity, a man of humility. He loved Jesus, always working Jesus into his conversations no matter where he was. He was also always the smallest man in the ring. He was always the one that the underdog, and yet in all of those situations, he shocked the world and overcame. A great image of what God is doing with his people. We are not very noble. We're not the strongest. We're not the richest. We're not the ones that everybody knows. But we do have a God who fights for us and will leave us undefeated.
How does she still sing with the sting of prognosis? Scars will not close and the wound will not open. How can he still dream with a string of felonies? It's realer than Tel Aviv, it's settled deep emotion. But a caged bird has a song, and Linda, you had the heart of God, and until your last breath. Never seen someone seem so alive on their deathbed. Saw you sing of his promises, yeah. Saw you singing in the dark city.
As you noticed that on my album cover, there were some images of Jesus. Some may not be familiar with it, but this is actually an early painting of Jesus. There was a moment on my album that was inspired by a conversation I had with a brother on the south side of St. Petersburg who was telling me that Christianity and African heritage are actually in contradiction. That as we were talking, I told him I love Jesus, and he almost fell out of his seat. Like, why would you do something like that? Don't you know that's the white man religion? And I remember telling him, I think that concept, you're accusing me of being the victim of white supremacy, but you don't realize that the concept that Jesus belongs to a particular race is actually the result of racial supremacy. You see, the thing is, the images that we see of Jesus all over the world are not a reflection at all of the true Jesus of the Bible. People typically reproduce Jesus in their own image. Why do we see a skinny white man in all these paintings? Because there was a skinny white man drawing it. Oftentimes, people will use that as a tool to oppress others. In reality, up till the first 600 years that Christianity existed, there were no pictures of a paler Jesus. He wasn't black, he certainly wasn't white. He was a man that existed above our racial categories, a Jewish, Middle Eastern man. And as he stands before all of us, he gives salvation, not based on your color of your skin, but faith in his work. So as you see here on the ground, there's broken glass. Because the fact of the matter is that all our images of Christ are all broken. And the only image of Christ that we want to be seen above everything else is us living out that image and loving our neighbor, serving his people, sharing his gospel. Though his ethnicity is important, we must realize that the power of Jesus in his saving work that transcends everyone who has abused his name.
Which Christ do you believe? You gotta know before you leave. Yeah. Yes, he did arrive. Yes, he was alive. Brown, Middle Eastern, definitely wasn't white. No, he never married, he never had any wives, but committed his life to an interracial bride. Yes, he did rise days after he died. God of the oppressed, even then he still thrives. Died as a criminal from the hood part of town. What can I say? Yes, he is God.
Brothers and sisters, I wish we had more time. Can you make some noise for yourselves one time for us? We're going to play some more music. I'm going to be up there on the stage to take pictures and have conversation. God bless y'all. Thank y'all so much for coming.
This ain't nothing for me. You can write the rules, we never do it. You put up the walls and we go through. Yeah, we refuse. No, we won't do it. No, we won't do it. Do it. Hey, 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 hey. Rebel, rebel, hey, hey. With a conscience.
And every day that they fly, be reminded that you can fly too. You can fly for God's purpose.